All right, welcome back, everybody, to Sports and Money. I am Ben Parker. As I've said before, you also see the show Pro Football Plus here, and we're affiliated with Fox Score Network. So please check us out. We're all over Apple and Spotify. We're all over YouTube. Lots of good NFL stuff. So you're here tonight for the Seattle Seahawks and for them trading Geno Smith, their quarterback, their guy that they love, that they just can't wait to go play with next year. They traded him for a third round draft pick. So that's why you're here tonight. So what we're going to do tonight is talk about, first of all, kind of the fun stuff of why. All right. Why did Seattle do this? Why move on here? And I would love to get you guys' thoughts on it, Seattle fans. I figure it's split. I think it's always been split, probably always will be split, even 10 years from now. But love to get your thoughts in the comments on it. So we'll talk about why, first of all, have a little bit of fun with that. I've got a point I want to make hidden in all that, and then we'll move on to the more serious question, which is, okay, what's next? Like it or not, love it or not, hate it or not, deal's done. Time to move on. So what's next? We'll talk about that as we wrap up the show a little bit later on tonight. So let's start off with why. And it is fascinating because Geno Smith, I think, is universally recognized as a good quarterback. And the question among everybody is, well, how good? That 2022 season was tremendous. I think he had a touchdown to interception ratio of 30-11, right? And then we've seen it drop off a little bit the past 2 years. The record is very good, 10-7 last year, I think, 9-8 the previous 2 years. Only made the playoff once. That's not necessarily Geno's fault. It's, you have winning records, you expect to be in the playoffs. So that is what it is. Production is up. He's probably averaging 4,000 passing yards for each of the past 3 seasons. The yards per attempt, yards per catch is pretty good too. So, and all we've ever heard from Seattle is, hey, we love this guy. We love this guy. He's our guy. In fact, and I'm not trying to mock them here, okay? I'm actually not. It's just fascinating stuff. I got two quotes here. One is from Mike McDonald back in February. This came off of Fox 13 TV in Seattle is the source for this quote. Mike McDonald said, Geno's our quarterback. I don't understand the conversation. It's pretty obvious this guy is a heck of a quarterback. He's our quarterback. We love him. And there was more to it, but that was from Mike, and that's been the narrative coming out of the organization, and that's fine. I largely believe what they're saying. And then even last week, I've been listening to the privileged to listen to the John Schneider show. It's a podcast. You can catch it on Apple and Spotify. Go check it out. But this is a direct quote from John just last week that I listened to almost a day after it came out while I was at work. Talking about Geno Smith, the guys who run the show asked him. They said, John, what about Geno? And John goes, quote, we'll be meeting with him with his guys tomorrow. We hope to, get an extension with Geno. Geno knows he's our guy. We love him, and we want to keep going forward. And that's a direct word for word quote from John Schneider on February 27th. He was there at the combine in Indianapolis and doing the show back with the other guys back where they were. I assume Seattle. You can catch that on the podcast and hear it there. It's on the February 25th, 27th podcast. And listen, I'm not knocking John and Mike. In fact, well done. All right, job well done. If you knew you wanted to move on, but obviously you can't tell everybody, hey, we're moving on. Until you actually make the deal, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But, the point I want to make in all this before we get back to the fun stuff, if you're connected to NFL people, man, you cannot count on them to tell you the truth, okay? Unless it's in their best interest, okay? So whether we're talking about a draft prospect that these guys say they like or these people say they don't like, well, sources are telling me that this guy is dropping, coming out of the combine. This guy is dropping. Nobody really likes this guy, or whether it's, re-signing a player or trading a player, these NFL people, they have no reason to tell you as the source. And I don't care how long you've known them, how good a buddy you think you are with them, how tight you think you are, or whether you think they are distanced enough from the subject to give you an objective viewpoint and not lie to you. You can't believe it, man. All right. Coming through this part of the year, all bets are off. Okay. And again, I'm not tabbing on John or Mike or anybody else here. But the point is, you can't buy into everything you hear just because it comes from a source. Okay. That could be one source, three sources. I don't care. You know, these folks have a job to do. And part of their job to do is not tell you what they're going to do. Okay. So whether, I don't care if you're a high ranking media person or if you're more like us who are catching our information second and third hand, these sources will lie if it benefits them. They will tell the truth if it benefits them. Okay. That's what their goal is, to benefit them and their organization and their goals. And that's fine. I got no problem with that. I'm not ragging on anybody here, but just be real careful when you hear about sources said this and sources said that. Well, then you have to ask yourself, well, why is that out there? If it's true, why is it out there? Okay. So anyway, as the story goes, John Schneider loves Geno Smith, and Mike McDonald loves Geno Smith. And the spin job that I figured was going to come out, and it's already kind of sort of starting to come out, is, hey, we just couldn't come together on a deal. Geno asked for one number, Geno's guys, and we were at a different number, and it just fell apart. Geno wanted to go play for Pete. And that was it. Okay, sure, right. If you believe that, that's fine. I respect your right to believe whatever you want to here, but listen, the truth here is organizations have these conversations behind closed doors, and there's no way going back to the 2024 off season that John and Mike didn't sit down for many hours probably and hash out what the Geno Smith situation would look like going forward. And it probably went something like this. Hey, we've got him for 2025. We do not have to give him anything new for 2024. We've got him for 24. We've got a roster that will give us a chance to kind of set everything up with a new coaching staff and everything, kind of get the rest of the roster continued built out like we want it. And then we'll reassess where we are. If we have a banner year and he's just exploding, Geno's exploding, then we'll re-sign him. And if not, then, hey, we'll probably move on. And that conversation would happen again, had to happen as soon as the 2024 season was over. So in January, there is no question in my mind that John and Mike, sometime in January, and their people sat down and came to a conclusion, we're moving on. All right. And listen, that doesn't mean they didn't love Geno. Doesn't mean they didn't enjoy working with him. Doesn't mean he's not a good quarterback. But when you see them 1 week later, 1 week after talks start, and, pretty much everybody admits the first exchanging of numbers was going to be somewhere around February 28th, right? That's not a standard operating procedure. But listen, these negotiations take months, often, very often, unless it's a truly elite guy that you just know is going to get cream of the crop money. These negotiations for most players take months, and in some cases take a year. And if you're Seattle, if you're Geno, and you want to be with each other, you wouldn't just after a week of exchanging numbers all of a sudden say, well, can't get a deal done, I guess we'll make a trade here. I'll give you some bread and you can have a bologna sandwich with that. Okay. I mean, that's just not going to pass the mustard here. Okay. So the decision was made some point in time. It was probably in the back of their minds in the 24 season, but there was no reason to move on it. You get here to the 25 off season and it's time to make a decision. And I think they already made a decision weeks ago about what they wanted to do and went ahead and did it now. And when you see a third round draft pick, it's not like the Raiders made them an offer they couldn't refuse here, right? Okay, so Seattle made a decision, and I think it's good for everybody. I think it's great for the Raiders. I think it's great for Geno Smith, and I think it's good for Seattle to move on. I don't have any problem with anybody's decision making here. I have a problem with the way anybody handled it. All right, but just please don't ask me to believe that just here in 1 week you just kind of couldn't get a deal together, and Geno wanted out and all this stuff. I'm not going to buy that. Okay. Tell me something else that I'll be more gullible on. All right. So, but again, why? Well, Geno's 34, right? I don't know if he would still be 34 at the start of the season or not. He's 34. And while he's a good production level quarterback, wherever you want to rank him, he's nowhere near the elite guys, and you could even make the argument that he's not even the second tier down by the time you start to factor in age and cap number, right? You can even factor that in. So he's somewhere between. People want him at 10. That's fine. Some people want him back at 18. That's fine. He's somewhere in there. Good quarterback, but you've got the age, you've got the cap number, and you've got a young head coach here. And you've got a GM here in John who has won before big time. John Schneider did a tremendous job with Pete Carroll over a decade ago, putting together what was threatening to be a dynasty. Ultimately, never was there with those players, but was threatening to be. So I feel like week in and week out with Geno, you had a chance, but also you're looking at other teams with younger quarterbacks. You're like, boy, it won't be long here. These younger quarterbacks are going to be, they're already competing with this, with us having Geno. And then, Geno's probably not going to get any better. So you're already behind everybody's got an elite quarterback. I just think week to week, Seattle felt like, and they probably felt like this back in 24 off season. I think they looked at Geno and said, yeah, we love him. Stand up guy, production level guy, gives us a chance. But since we're already kind of starting over, we want more, and I think you can see that in the moves. Seattle has now got, I think they went from like $8 billion over the cap to 31 under, something like that. So it's like $40 million of switch change. The moves they made with some of the real releases just in the past week here, almost all of those could be considered as just cap casualties, right? It's like, hey, these were guys who were either injured or getting old or underperforming. The Geno Smith thing signals for sure, though, that they are ready to kind of hit reset here, at least on the offensive side, and maybe, just maybe, take a bit of a hit on the 25 season in order to really kind of funnel this thing into new beginnings here with Mike Macdonald and John Schneider, who probably feel pretty good about each other based on what this first year was. And I think that's really what it comes down to. They wanted a kind of a fresh hit at quarterback, and that's okay. I mean, that's totally fine. In fact, I encourage it. All right, I'm not discouraging what the Raiders are doing over there. That's fine. They got their thing, and I made a separate video on that. But I really think these decisions were made long ago, and probably were already somewhat sort of planned out in the back of everybody's mind, even maybe as early as 2024 offseason. So that's where that sits. Geno Smith moving on. So the question then becomes, well, what's next? What is Seattle doing? Are they all in for 25? I think even that is in question. You see them letting Tyler Lockett go, which is not unexpected, but you also saw them. Reports are coming out, and again, why is this information coming out if it's true? Because somebody wants it out there, right? Somebody somewhere wanted this to be out there. Reports are coming out that Seattle actually offered DK Metcalf in a trade for Max Crosby. I think it was Metcalf and Geno Smith for Max Crosby is what we're hearing. Is that true? Only a handful of people actually know. But that's what we're hearing. If that was true, then that's your whole offense right there, aside from a couple of running backs, right? Geno Smith and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett heading out the door, all for different reasons. Goodness gracious, what is that? 70% of your offense right there? Maybe 80% of your offense heading out the door. So clearly, if that's true, Seattle is ready to hit the reset button on the offensive side of the football, which might mean they eat it a little bit in 2025, hoping to come back and get really hot and compete in 26. We'll see. Does it also mean they've got all this cap space? They were interested in adding a Max Crosby. Would they be interested in adding Myles Garrett from Cleveland? A big trade there. Maybe we'll see. I kind of doubt Seattle wants to give up all those draft picks. They seem to want to hunt down a quarterback, wide receiver for your, prime defensive end. Cleveland's not going to want, which obviously they can't do it now anyway. But Cleveland would not have wanted Metcalf and that Geno Smith trade. So anyway, that's all water under the bridge. What now? That's the fun stuff. But what now? Seriously, where does Seattle go? What's in their heads? Does Seattle make this move if they don't already kind of sort of know what they want to happen next? I think the answer is no. John Schneider's a smart guy. Mike Macdonald is a smart guy. I don't think they make this move unless they already kind of know what they want to happen next. And so then that gets to be, well, is that a old quarterback, a young quarterback, a free agent quarterback? Let me run through some of the things I think it's not first, and that is the free agent market / trade market. So Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones. Aside from maybe bringing in Daniel Jones on an ultimate cheap contract for 1 year, I don't think that's the road Seattle goes down. I can't for the life of me see why Seattle, with a young head coach and a GM who looks like he's going to be here for a while too, I can't for the life of me see why they would let go of Geno Smith, who's producing, who they like, who's been in the system, who is winning football games with them, why they would let him walk and then pick up a Sam Darnold who's got less proven years of good play, a Russell Wilson, and Aaron Rodgers, who is considerably older and who just came off of a rather large fiasco with the New York Jets. I can't see why Seattle would do that. That just does not make any sense at all to me. I'm not saying they wouldn't. And again, maybe you bring in a cheap guy, Daniel Jones or Jacoby Brissett, or maybe even one of the Raiders guys, if the Raiders were to cut loose of one of their guys. I can't remember their names right now. I apologize. So maybe they bring in a cheap guy for a season, but for the next 2 or 3 years, I cannot see them doing a Sam Darnold move, a Russell Wilson move, an Aaron Rodgers move. That would just surprise me to no end. So that brings us to young quarterbacks. And in my head, I think that's where Seattle's going. I think Seattle has an idea of what they want to happen in this year's draft. And I think they've got a guy in mind. And I'll give you the name here in a second. But I think that's what they want to happen. I just don't see why you don't go ahead and pay Geno, who's been good, if you're going to bring in another old quarterback. So it's got to be a young quarterback. And I don't think I'm reinventing the wheel here. Give me a second. I'm going to start sharing screen here. And we'll talk about what actually Seattle might be looking at here. So let me bring up some of the stuff here. Get this old Zoom thing out of the way. So this is mock draft database, mock simulator. And the only reason we're doing this is to bring up the quarterbacks, okay? It's a great website. We're not actually doing mock drafting tonight. I just want to talk about quarterbacks, okay? If it's this year's draft, if it's 2025 draft, and if Seattle is drafting somebody young, who are they looking at? I don't think they're looking at Cam Ward. The reason why is Seattle's sitting here at pick 18, right, in the first round. It would be unbelievably expensive to trade up into pick number 1 with Tennessee. To go from 18 to pick number 1 to get Cam Ward, that's the only way you guarantee you get Cam Ward, right? I don't really see John Schneider doing that. And even if he wanted to, my gosh, it would be expensive. Boy, they'd have to give up. I don't know what all they'd have to give up. Probably 2 first-round picks, probably pick 18 this year and a first-round pick next year, and probably a couple of second-round picks as well. I think the price would be way through the roof. And listen, if somebody loves Cam Ward that much and you need a quarterback and you're like, man, we got a decent roster, which Seattle does. Seattle's got a decent roster here to work with. That's not a problem. If they wanted to do that, I wouldn't criticize that. I would say, hey, that's richer than I want to get involved with here in this year's quarterbacks. But I would not criticize that. But I don't think that's what Seattle's doing. I just don't figure that they've got in store here to, and there's a very good chance they do let Metcalf go here or trade him. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. But I just don't see them making that kind of a huge move up the board from 18 to 1. Maybe they do. If you're in the fan base, let me know if you would be interested in seeing that. I do like Cam Ward, but boy, Seattle's got to like him an awful lot to trade up from 18 to 1 to get Cam Ward. Now, what about Shedeur Sanders? We're hearing that some people don't like Shedeur and other people still do. I still think Shedeur goes somewhere in the top 10 picks myself, is what I'm thinking. But would Seattle trade up somewhere in the top 10 to get the Shedeur? If they like Shedeur, if they've got their heart set on Shedeur, that's a little risky, right? Because the only way you guarantee that you're getting Shedeur is if you think Cam Ward is going 1 or 2, one of the top 2 draft picks, and you trade all the way up to pick number 2 to get Shedeur. And boy, while I'm okay with anybody drafting Shedeur Sanders, I like Shedeur as well. And if you don't, that's fine. I know some people don't. But it's hard for me to envision Seattle letting go of Geno and then trading all the way up somewhere in the top 10 which would be less expensive than trading the number one, but still giving up a lot to trade up into the top 10 to pick Shedeur Sanders, a guy that not everybody even loves anyway. They'd have to really love Shedeur, and that's fine if they do. If they pull that off, I got no problem with that. Heck, you got a young quarterback and a decent roster, and hey, let's go. So that's fine. But I don't think that's the move either. If I were laying odds here, I don't think that's the move. What I figure is happening here, and I don't know. I figure they like Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss, and I'm a little less excited about that. But here's a franchise that has worked with Geno Smith the past 3 years, who is, boy, you talk about a late bloomer. Has there been a later bloomer than Geno Smith? I mean, not many guys, right? And even before that, you had a guy in Russell Wilson who was drafted. I forget if it was late first or if it was in the second round, but it wasn't high, if I remember right. So this would feel like it would be more up Seattle's alley right here, is that they've kind of got their eye on, listen, maybe it's a Jalen Milroe, who's an incredible runner with a good, strong arm, just is raw, but does Seattle truly look at themselves as a quarterback developing kind of a franchise? Maybe, possibly. I'm not sure that they view themselves as that with this particular coaching regime, especially just bringing in a new offensive coordinator. They can't feel great about bringing in a really raw prospect like Jalen Milroe and trying to develop him, but maybe they are, and that's fine too. I figure the play is Jackson Dart here. If you're sitting at 18, where Seattle is, and you're kind of counting through the teams that need quarterbacks, which could be Tennessee, it could be Cleveland, it could be New York, right? That's three. It's not the Raiders anymore. It could be the Jets. That's four. You're kind of starting to sift through here the teams before you, and you're kind of thinking, well, one of those teams, maybe Cleveland, doesn't do anything at quarterback this year because they got still so much money tied up with Sean Watson. And maybe one of those other teams picks up Sam Darnold. I got to think Seattle probably likes their chances of being able to land Jackson Dart at 18. They got to at least like him enough to be thinking about that. I figure that's the play here. And I figure, there's a lot of people that do like Jackson Dart. He has zoomed up mock draft boards during the past few weeks in a way that he never did at any point in time during his college career. Did you ever see Jackson Dart significantly talked about in the first round? You would hear him mentioned later rounds in the draft, but he has just rocketed up the boards here over the past few weeks. And I figure I figure Seattle already knew they wanted to move off of Geno Smith for a younger quarterback. And I figure in their minds, they're probably thinking, well, possibly Shedeur slips to us. But if not, which is unlikely, then Jackson Dart could very well be sitting there at 18. And maybe if we start to feel like, at any point in here, these teams don't need quarterbacks, but if at any point we feel like we need to trade up a little bit to keep somebody else from trading back in to get Jackson Dart, we can do it. That's got to at least be one of the options they like. Otherwise, I don't know why you do this. Now, here's the other kicker, and we're hearing this from all corners of the planet, and I tend to agree with it, is that the 2026 quarterback class offers a lot more potential, at least, than this class. And I tend to agree with that. I'm not trying to just dump on Cam Ward or Sanders and Jackson Dart. I think they're all, to different degrees, players that give you options. But the 2026 boards is one that a lot of people are interested in. So what I've done here, I've got two different things we can look at. This is the NFL mock draft database, and this is their consensus big board for 2026. It's early. These things change a bunch, but I just wanted to give you a glance at it. So Malachi Nelson, quarterback out of UTEP. Stay tuned on that one. That is not the big name in this group, but for now, it's an interesting name up here. Lenoris Sellers out of South Carolina. If you haven't seen him, 2024 at South Carolina, go check him out. He just kind of exploded on the scene. He runs well. He throws well. Still a work in progress, but boy, did he look good. There's enough here with Sellers right here, just by himself, to get you a little bit excited and say, hey, if we can see another year of that in 2025 in the Southeastern Conference, then this would be a guy right here who's going to be sitting there in the first round, top 10. Nico Lamalavea, a younger guy out of Tennessee, big time name, blue chip prospect, had a decent first year in Tennessee. Very interesting guy. He's going to have one heck of a season with Tennessee this year in order to see him actually even be in this year's draft. I figure he's not, but if he explodes this year, which people talk about him having that kind of capability. He's getting rich in college, though. All right, probably all of these guys are to different degrees, but Lama Lavea here, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name. He's getting rich at Tennessee, making a whole bunch of money. So there's really no reason for him to come out in next year's draft. But we'll see if he explodes and he can be a top pick. Then he probably will. But these are the two names right here. Okay, Arch Manning and Drew Aller. Arch Manning, of course, Texas. Drew Aller, Penn State. Both guys still need to show what they can really do. Neither guy has truly stepped up. But you talk about two guys, especially Aller, but two guys who have pedigree. They've got that blue chip factor. They have the size. They have the arm. They just seem to look like legit NFL level type quarterbacks. These are the two names right here. And either one of these guys looks like at this point that they've kind of got that more NFL touch, NFL potential than anybody in this year's draft. So the thinking could be, and I'll give you another glance here in a second. Let's go ahead and do that. These other guys are all possibilities, but they're not the big names here. This is another excellent site, NFL Draft Buzz. They do a good job as well. Everybody sees things differently. That's okay. But once again, they've got a different take on it, and that's fine. These things change. But it's Arch Manning out of Texas, Lama Lavea out of Tennessee, and Drew Aller out of Penn State, with Sellers coming up here in fourth. But again, the names are Arch Manning and Drew Aller. Those are the two. All right, those are the two on everybody's mind right now. And then you've got these other two young guys who may or may not even be in next year's draft. Okay, stay tuned to that. But the thinking could be here in Seattle, if they were willing to give up Geno Smith and DK Metcalf in a trade, that would absolutely blow up the entire offense for Seattle. And there's just no way they could put all that production back together in one offseason with limited cap space, and even with the draft picks they have, there's no chance they could have put back together. And they still may let go of Metcalf, and there goes 70-80% of your offense between the two guys. There's no way they could put together back that kind of an offense in one off season. And the thinking may be, we've got a chance to turn in one of the stud defenses in the NFL. Yes, we'll be kind of bad for a year, but because we've got a 10-7 season under our belts, we've got some credit built up here for our front office, for our coaching staff. We can be a little down this year. We can put together a sparkling defense. We can kind of continue to draft to build up the offense and the defense. But then next year, 2026, we'll get really aggressive and we'll trade up for somebody, whether that's Arch Manning, Drew Aller, or one of these other, up-and-comer guys, okay? That could be the thinking there as well, and I don't know which it is. I honestly think, knowing the Seattle organization, I honestly think it's probably the Jackson Dart thing is kind of what they've kind of shadow moving here for, with at least possibility of the 26th draft in the background. So there's a lot moving right there, right? And you never know what other teams are going to do. And you never know how good these quarterbacks are going to be. But one thing we do know is, boy, they moved off quick of Geno Smith, okay? They moved off of him fast, and I don't think that was an emotional decision. I don't think that was a last-second decision. I don't think that was anything of the sort. I think that was long in coming, and a few weeks planned out, and then they went ahead and pulled the string on it, and I'm okay with that. But this is some of the possibilities here at quarterback, okay? I don't think they're going the free agent route, at least for long-term purposes. I don't see them doing that. Maybe a cheap guy to get them through next season. But I'm not totally sure. Listen, they want to compete, they want to win. But if you're Seattle and you're looking around the NFL, and boy, you're seeing Patrick and Lamar and Josh Allen, and you're looking at Joe Burrow, and then you're looking at C.J. Stroud, however good he is, and you're looking at Jalen Hurts and the Eagles winning Super Bowls, and you're looking at Jaden Daniels, and then you look back at your quarterback room, and it's Geno Smith. I think they saw a need for an upgrade here ultimately when they considered age and kind of coming prospects. And I think they're looking at maybe a Shador, probably a Jackson Dart, and then backup plan would be the 2026 draft. So again, I don't think I'm saying anything weird there, anything out of the way. If you're a Seattle fan, let me know what you're looking at there. I think that's pretty much all we're going to cover for the night. So anyway, thank you all for listening. Again, this is Sports and Money Pro Football Plus. We also are connected with the Box Score Network, and I am Ben Parker. So stay tuned. Enjoy the off season. Things will happen very quickly here over the free agent stuff over the next few days, and then the draft here in a few weeks. We will check it all out. All right. Have a great one. Bye.